Live, and the Hangout on Air is now live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis.
And I am Mike Mateen. And I am not in my, although this probably looks like the last background I was in, a different hotel.
Different hotel. Oh, so briefly in the Eastern time zone.
Yes.
So this was an episode of Survivor, huh? There was crazy stuff happening in this episode.
Yeah. And sorry, it seems like the most popular room in the hotel. So there's all people knocking, like adding okay.
Well, you're breaking up a lot. It's hard to make you out.
Trying to see if there's anything I can do to fix it. And I'm also very distracted because there's a lot going on, like right outside.
Yeah, we can hear them.
Yeah, that happens about every 10 minutes.
Well,
is it better now?
It comes and goes, so I think we'll just have to make the best of it. And if I need you to repeat something, that we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it. Hopefully, it won't be too much of a problem. In any case, I didn't hear what you were trying to say about the episode.
The episode, I mean, a lot happened, but it reminded me kind of, I got the same feeling after this episode as like I've started to get this season where it's a good season, lots of things are happening, but I don't necessarily like all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And like the people I like keep getting voted off, and even though you can say, oh, well, they got played, it all makes sense, and I'm not saying someone got screwed, but I'm not happy with how things are turning off. So it truly is like ambivalent, you know, because on one hand, I like that it's a really entertaining game of Survivor. On the other hand, I'm not happy that the people I'm rooting for are not necessarily doing people I don't like or, you know, be well ingrained in, you know, they've got idols and extra votes and, you know.
Yeah. Plus, move over, Dan. We've got a new person to dislike even more than you.
Oh, yes. Sort of out of the blue.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, you know, I mean, we'll talk more about, you know, what Will did, but I just, in terms of my own reaction and like what my gut tells me, is that Dan is going to rewatch the episode and not see anything wrong with what he said or did. Will is probably going to rewatch this and be mortified, is my guess. I think he is just beyond his last thread.
I hope.
Yeah, because he was, especially in the tribal council, he just seemed like he was just completely beyond any rationality. He was not hearing himself speak. He was completely on autopilot. That's how it came across to me, which doesn't excuse it, but it just makes me think that he's going to watch himself and regret it, as opposed to Dan, who's probably going to say, I don't see what people are complaining about. That's my guess.
Yeah, I can only hope, because this was so nasty that I don't want to believe that anybody could think this was an okay way to behave.
Well, it's clearly not. I'm making no excuses for him. Right. I think he needs to do some serious self-reflection. But at the same time, I think I think everybody can relate to the idea that sometimes something just sets you off and you realize at a certain point, like, you don't even mean what you're saying anymore. You're just like, a switch is flipped and you are saying stuff on purpose to hurt the other person, and you don't even necessarily mean it. You're just kind of need to get that all out. And I think he is lost his grip on reality. He has no sense of perspective where he is right now.
Yeah. I guess the reason, and I don't know his situation, and I don't know anything about him personally, but the reason that I wasn't as quick to cut him any kind of slack is that I feel like if you have that stuff happen, like it happens when you're a kid, when you're full of like hormones and all these kind of things, like into your 20s, and you realize after having regretted behaving like that enough times that you stop doing it.
Yeah.
And maybe that is the case with him, and it was just that he got drawn to the edge again and wasn't able to control himself, or maybe it's never happened to him, and it's just weird that this brought that out, but yes, well, there are times when you're younger, and at least in my experience, when you're younger and you say these really hurtful things because you don't have enough experience to feel the regret of saying hurtful things when you're angry.
The other thing is too, we've certainly, like, just by comparison, we've seen the way Rodney acts, and he is no paragon of restraint, but he's also never done anything like this. And even Dan will say some hurtful things, but it's all kind of couched in this weird, like, pseudo polite tone where he's being kind of a dick, but he's not screaming at you.
Right. And it doesn't, and with Dan, it doesn't necessarily feel like he means it. It just feels like he's naive or ignorant to what he's saying.
Yeah. He's not aware how what he is saying comes across.
Yeah. Will went out of his way to say things as hurtful as possible.
Yeah. I think part of what is making me suspect that this was more of a screw loose type of situation than a genuinely bad person situation is partly really just that, especially in the tribal council, he just, I feel like he wasn't even there behind his eyes. You know what I mean? I feel like he was disconnected from what was happening. He had checked out inside, and it was just his mouth running on autopilot at that point, because what he was saying made no sense. He was not responding coherently to the things people were saying back to him. There was,
that is true. Whereas I was just more like caught, like, how is he still a day later? Like, how is he like in mean and not just apologize this? You makes a lot of sense, that he's not coming back.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, without wanting to place the blame on her in any way, because it was completely unreasonable how he flipped out on her, I think Shireen did have an opportunity to try and diffuse the situation and be the bigger person, and she chose not to take it. And that was at the challenge, which is the afternoon before tribal council. And so that probably just kept him primed, even if he had maybe started to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, true. But I had to respect her so much for doing that, for being willing to stand up for herself in a way.
Yeah. I had mixed feelings about it. I certainly understand it emotionally. But I think it was also in terms of gameplay. She had the opportunity to be the bigger person and kind of shame him of saying, like, even with all of the mean stuff you said to me, I could have kept this from you, but here it is anyway, because I'm not an asshole. You know what I mean? Not that I'm saying she is an asshole for the choice she made, but it's more like she had an opportunity to be magnanimous about it and didn't take it. Which, again, I don't blame her for exactly, but think that it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, well, it would have been hard, I think, because I don't know that he would have thought that she was being magnanimous unless she called attention to it, which is almost as bad.
Yeah, it's true, because it could also have just been seen as taking the path of least resistance. If she just caves and lets him have it, then she's weak, like that sort of thing. Like cause it's true that what if it didn't come across as magnanimous? What if it just came across as, well, she's too much of a wuss to say anything or do anything to make more waves, and she's just going to take everything he said and suffer in a corner. Like, it could have come across that way too, and maybe that was what she was wanting to avoid, is to not only say, look, I have the power to do this and I'm going to use it because of what you did. But the thing is, like, kind of like at the tribal council, and perhaps like you were just suggesting, he was in a headspace where like there was no talking to him anymore at that point, I don't think.
No, and I think that's the other piece of the problem with letting him have it without. Why I don't think he would have recognized that Shireen did him a favor or was the bigger person by allowing him to have it. I think he felt entitled to be able to get his love letter. Mm-hmm. And because he was in such a weird place, like he was so just tunnel visioned on his own state of mind. So it's kind of entitlement, not that, like, I just don't think he would have thought there would be any reason for someone to deny him this, because he didn't really, not that he didn't remember, but he didn't recognize how he had behaved.
Yeah. Because he said things in the tribal council like, I never personally attacked you, which is nonsense. Like, that makes no sense. That speaks to me of someone who is not really even in control of the words they're saying anymore. He is just denying anything that anyone puts to him. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like he's saying, I never personally attacked you. And she goes, oh yeah, you said this, which was a personal attack. And he goes, yeah, that's true though. And you said this. Well, that's true too. And it's like, what? What? It makes no sense. He was, I mean, I think he should be ashamed of how he behaved. No question about it. But I suspect, my gut tells me that he will be. That he's going to watch this and feel ashamed for how he acted.
Yes.
I believe that he owes her a huge apology at the reunion, if he hasn't already given her one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even more so than Dan, because we don't want to let him off the hook for his slapper comment. That was not cool either. But even still, that was, not to her face, and it was a poor taste joke, as opposed to screaming the most hurtful possible insults he can think of at her face in front of everybody. That's a whole new level.
Yes.
Any case.
Yeah. Well, I figured we'd get into it, but I was just going to say, like, who would have thought that Rodney now not only doesn't seem like the biggest dick, but he also seems like the one with the best game plan. He seems to be the best Survivor player right now.
Well, it's only by virtue of comparison, because Mike was doing so well, and then he just... Well, I think he made two enormous mistakes. I think the second one was because he was still panicked from the first one. But
yes,
that just means that he ended up doubling down on, instead of successfully executing some damage control. Yes. And so much of this was all even before the credits. We had, so we start off with Rodney approaching Tyler and Carolyn. And Will is implied, although I don't think we see him in that scene, with the idea of, we're going to get out Mike. And Tyler's kind of open to that, but Mike overhears them, and it's like, oh, that's going to be something. Just to be clear, he does still have his own idol, right?
Mike?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because he tried using the fake idol last time, which wasn't real. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So in any case, we get to the auction, and we got the first of what was a bananas twist that we hadn't seen before, which is Will buys the first thing, which is a note that says, guess what? Your auction is done. You have to leave now.
Yes.
Which
just started a whole chain of events that were.
Yeah. I was just like, I felt bad for Will at that point, but it's also just kind of like, that was amazing. Good job, Survivor producers. That's a new wrinkle. So anyway, he has to leave. And then the next item is chicken and waffles. And Shireen buys it and then gives this really weird speech about how she didn't want to bid for an advantage, so she might as well get some food. And it's like, what? Like, okay, I mean, it's one thing for her to have maybe decided, I don't want to go aggressively to the advantage because I don't want them to start seeing me as a threat. Or maybe, because Mike wanted it so much that they had worked out something between them. Like maybe he had talked to her and he said, please let me try to get the advantage. And she agreed maybe. Who knows what the motivation was, but the speech was bizarre. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like I couldn't think of any reason why she should do that.
I felt like it was, I don't know, the best way to describe it is probably pedantic, that she felt like making sure everybody knew that she knows that in Survivor there's an advantage that you can wait for, but she's choosing not to go for it. But she's smart enough to know it exists. Because she does have some of those moments. Like, that is a quirky thing about her. She wants to show how much she knows. And she also just wanted chicken and waffles. So it ended up in a weird, awkward, like, I think that's the explanation.
Well, yeah. I agree. I guess what I mean is, like, it seems perfectly in character for her to do it, but I can't help but wonder what she thought the benefit there was. I don't know.
People would know that she wasn't so stupid. Like, people wouldn't be sitting there and be like, she's a super fan and she doesn't wait for the advantage. Mm-hmm. That's the advantage I see that she sees.
Yeah. So in any case, once the idea of the advantage is brought up, we have several people sort of declare that they don't intend to bid on food at all. Although we have Jen buy an enormous cocktail, fishbowl size thing. Sierra buys some kebabs. Rodney buys steak. Did you say something?
No.
Oh, did you say something? I mentioned the cocktail and it sounded like you said something.
I did not.
Oh, okay.
Say hear me.
So in any case, several people get food, but now it's down to Mike, Dan, and Carolyn, who are the ones determined to try to go for the advantage. But the next item, loved notes from home, and loved one notes. And who knows if they would have thought of it otherwise, but how about some group kudos to Shireen for pointing out that usually the way it works is the lowest bid gets offered to everybody else. And so, hey, if we all agree to keep it at a $20 bid, then everyone can get it for $20. Like, that was her idea.
Yep.
But I don't think anyone was, I don't know. The people who already don't like her are not going to give her anything. But anyway, Probst is
Will wasn't there, by the way, to see that. So Will was not present.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah. Well, and then he wouldn't have been eligible in any case because he already got booted. Yep. So everyone seems to be on board so that it's still a fair thing to get the advantage. But then Mike hesitates. It's one thing, like, we get that he wants the advantage, but like, boy, dude, just roll the dice, man. You just blew up your game with this weird, I'm going to trick you guys and then actually steal the advantage under your noses oh wait, no, I just realized how that would blow up my whole game. Oh wait, no, I mean, it's conscience. That's what did it, not the fact that you guys are looking at me with hate in your eyes now.
Yeah. It's probably a little bit of both. I mean,
yeah, well, yeah, I mean,
he probably was in this whole like warpy, like, oh my God, I've got this idea. I really want this advantage. Maybe I can trick them into not knowing that I didn't pay this money. And then when they call him out on it, he's like, oh shit, they called me out on it. And you know what? This is a shitty thing to do.
Yeah.
So his apology, I feel like, was genuine, but it was prompted by him realizing it messed up his game.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Well, yeah, I think he would not have let his conscience make him put it back if nobody else seemed bothered by it.
Well, I just don't think it would have clicked because I think he was so distraught by what he was trying to do. I don't think he thought this was a great plan. He just didn't know what to do, and he was running on the fly with this concoction.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, it's like when both Tyler and Dan said, go ahead, go get it, and he's like, oh no, I'll do it. You guys just go first. Like, he knew right then that he was about to do a shitty thing. He was not in denial that this was an okay thing to do. He knew exactly what he was doing, and I think he had just failed to actually consider and walk through in his head how other people would actually feel about that.
Yeah.
He knew it was a shitty thing to do.
Not pissing off everybody that you're in alliance with or something.
Dude.
Because then you have 4 votes, 5 votes. Not that he knew this was an extra vote, but you have a lot more votes by not pissing people off than you do by winning that advantage.
Yeah. So, so that was bananas. That was a terrible idea. And then we get the credits for the episode.
I know. That shocked me.
I know. I guess technically we got the credits in between him not, trying to take the advantage, but then we came back for him changing his mind. Because we had Dan explicitly really pissed. Carolyn tries to give her letter back. And I think that's where Mike finally goes, oh, yeah, this is not going to work out well for me. I need to fix this. and he felt bad, but I think I think the thing is he was not going to let guilt stop him from doing it. But he would have done it and felt guilty about it, but then maybe been okay with it if it worked out. But at the same time, the answer of, oh, if you guys are mad at me for screwing you over, oh, well, then I'll give it back then. That you can't say that either.
That's the problem, is that it was never going to work out. Like, even if he had successfully tricked them into thinking that if they didn't realize that he hadn't paid, then when the advantage comes up and he somehow outbids them, they would have known, and they would have been extra pissed then too, and he would have had this advantage, and they would have all been gunning for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was one of the dumbest things I think we have ever seen in the game. It is so clearly lose-lose. There is no winning scenario. Yeah. It was so dumb. It was very disappointing because he had been playing pretty well for a while. But, oh no. So in any case, though, he ends up getting the letter, and so they have to draw rocks for the advantage, and Dan wins it, which, it's like, oh well, I'm not sure I especially like Carolyn either. And Mike certainly didn't deserve it after that performance. So that was weird. But so this is where we get Will really bummed about having to leave the idol, but then comes back and finds a note. I assumed first that it was going to be a clue to another idol, but no. Survivor's got more sneaky things up their sleeves. It's not just even a riddle. It's an actual map with a marked stick and everything to a new supply of food, trail mix and electrolyte powder and beef jerky.
Yes.
So,
and the irony, if he had sat and ate it himself, maybe he wouldn't have been such an asshole.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, I mean, so this is something Dalton Ross seemed to have a pretty strong opinion about in his recap. I'm not sure I know completely how I feel. Dalton makes the case that it was a dumb move to try to give it back and share because of exactly what happened, which is no matter what you give them, they're going to assume or at least be suspicious that you kept something back for yourself and probably the best of whatever there was. Because that's exactly what they did think. And how are they not going to think that? So even if you don't hold back anything, they're going to think you did. So maybe better to actually just keep it secret to yourself. I mean, you run the risk that you'll be found out, but, you know, as opposed to setting it up where you're in a position that you can't, they're going to suspect you and you can't even prove them wrong.
But I'm not sure that that's as given as Dalton Ross makes it sound. I mean, yes, it did happen, and it has happened in other scenarios, but if people trust you and it's pretty straightforward, like, and he could have showed them, like, the directions pretty much explain what it was. It's not like he was hiding, like, fucking steak somewhere, you know? Yes, it ended up very bad for him. I think that the better plan, even regardless, would be to keep it for yourself, because there's nothing to be gained from giving it to everyone, and there's everything to be gained. Well, except if you're who could win a challenge, even if he, you know, took a steroid injection. Like, I mean, it's just not. But I guess your mentality that would have gained a lot. You know, if he had been able to heal, your brain works a little bit better. I think those things, and clearly people keep stuff hidden. I mean, Joe squirreled away an entire fake idol thing and made, you know, no one cares if Will disappears for a while. You know?
Yeah.
So the better plan, I agree, the better plan would be keep it to yourself. I don't think it was a foregone conclusion that they automatically would behave this way. You know?
Certainly when he made his decision, I was on board at that time of thinking, you know, my thought process in the immediate was probably what his was, which is to say, even if I feel stronger because I've been eating, I still don't think I'm likely to win any challenges. And so maybe having everybody be happy with me is a better way to use this. And of course, even if I keep it, there's potentially the risk that I would be found out and they'd be mad. But I can also, you know, like as you've just said, there's also this risk and almost a certainty that at least some people are going to suspect that you held something back, whether you did or not. And it's a tricky scenario, but I think what would have been really key in this case is like what you said, which is if he had a full stomach, maybe he wouldn't have flipped out the way he did.
Yeah, that's another way to get people to like you, is to not say that no one loves them and cares about them.
Yeah. And like, even though nobody else, I mean, Jen and Mike kind of were on her side, but, you know, none of the rest of, you know, no one else was really jumping in to defend her. But it was also at the same time, like from a gameplay standpoint, I can see why, you know, why should they try to get in the middle of that? Two of your competitors are fighting. Why should you stop them?
Right.
from a gameplay perspective. I mean, we like to think that, you know, as human beings, they would help. But at the same time, this is a complex moral situation. You're playing a game. Is it even their business to get in the middle? So I could see that. But at the same time, it was clear that several people were pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think they were a little shell-shocked. It's hard to, like...
It was pretty extreme.
Yeah, and it's like you're in this weird situation where, you know, like, was this before they'd read their letters, right?
Yeah, well, so no, it wasn't. We actually skipped a couple of things. So the Will's blow up was later. So what actually happened after this was everyone comes back with their letters, and Mike, I think, still off balance and panicking about how badly he screwed up at the auction, decides as damage control.
How do I fix this?
Yeah. Everybody's excited to read the letter from home. They're very emotional about it. They're very happy. They can't wait. Oh, but no, we first have to have tribe drama.
I just fuck. I mean, he was right about everything he said. It was just such the wrong thing to do at the wrong time, in the wrong way.
What was hilarious is how much fun we were making. We were making fun of Rodney last week from the preview of "You better relax, bro," and that was actually still pretty entertaining because it was also clear that he was actually. It was very much. Yeah, well, he did, right? So there was an element still of Rodney going, "What? Flipped? No way! I didn't flip. No, you're the crazy one." You know, that whole sort of thing. But at the same time, also, he's absolutely right. Mike, what the timing, dude? And even if it wasn't for the letters, when has it ever been the good move for someone to just say, "Hey, everybody, let's gather together, and I'm going to declare this thing"? I don't think that ever works.
Yeah. Here's how it's all going down right now. And how does that gain you anything? You know what it does? All it does is expedite it, which is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we have talked about that Mike doesn't know is that Rodney's been talking about this for 6 weeks or 6 episodes. It doesn't mean anything until it's ready to time to go.
Well, and even if it was...
Fast forward it.
It's one thing when someone knows they're on the chopping block and there's nothing else they can do, and so they throw a Hail Mary pass of saying, "I just hope I can cause enough chaos to make something happen." But there is no reason for Mike to feel that way yet. It was prior to the immunity challenge, and he has a hidden idol in his pocket. It was the wrong time and the wrong move, even if it had been the right time.
Strategically used that knowledge and sat back on it and said, okay. And also remembered that just because Rodney says it and people say, okay, doesn't mean that they're all doing it. Like, take a step back, you know, maybe take Rodney aside and see what happens if you kind of poke at him a little bit, or maybe take one of those people aside and say, "Hey, what's going on? I heard you were saying this," and make them and see how they react and whether they feel like they're being defensive or if they're just kind of like, "Oh, well, come on, man. Like, I'm really going to do that with Rodney," you know?
Imagine how much more effective Mike's pitch to Dan, which was already pretty good when it got to that point. But imagine how much more effective if he hadn't had this whole big blow up where he announced it to everybody and instead just pulled Dan aside and said, "Look, I know that I made everybody mad at the auction, and I'm sorry. I was just spooked because right before we went out there, I heard them overhearing, and I think that they're planning to target me, to blindside me, and I'm a little bit spooked. Maybe you could help me find out if that's true," and then kind of like enlist him and make him feel like he's contributing to finding out if this is really true. And, and maybe Mike was just in a position of feeling like he didn't know if he could actually even trust anybody. He was that spooked. But think how much more effective his pitch to Dan would have been if there hadn't been, certainly better if he hadn't done both of those things, but even if he just hadn't done the second one. Oh man, Mike. Oh, I think this might, other than episodes where someone's actions lead to them getting voted out immediately, this might be the single most egregious torpedoing of one's own game that we've ever seen.
Yes, because I think the most egregious is when Tyson voted himself out. But
yeah, or when what's his name gave up the immunity challenge or the immunity idol to someone else at tribal council and then was promptly voted out because he didn't have it anymore.
Happened twice, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right, but yeah.
Those three are the most egregious, but you're right. Yeah. Other than like the direct action, this was up there.
Yeah.
Just he was doing so well that, I mean, at this point, like, it's almost like Rodney doesn't necessarily even need to target him anymore because he's pissed everybody off. Like, he's not a threat anymore. Well, he's not the leader.
It was like we saw the clip.
Yeah.
The clip from Next Time where Dan is like, "You are so much bigger threat now." Yeah.
No.
In any case, so now everybody's mad at Mike, and he's like, "Well, at least it's out in the open, but everybody hates me now, so I'm not sure if that's a win."
No, and this is what transformed Rodney into the best Survivor player going on right now, because Rodney has a plan, and he sticks to his plan, although it is nice that his plan doesn't require him to do anything until like 5 episodes from now.
Well, but what it does do is allow him to recognize, oh, Mike just made a huge mistake. I need to take advantage of that. He's just alienated Dan and Sierra. I need to go after them. And in particular, Dan was very emotional. And so Rodney's there on the beach and is just kind of going, I can't believe he would do that to you. I thought you guys were so close. And then, you're there at the auction and he tries to screw you over like that. I just couldn't believe it. And then he comes back and you're all ready to read your letter and he just wants to interrupt it with all this nonsense.
Yes. Rodney made one of the best moves in this game by doing that. He took complete advantage of Dan, and he recognized that Dan felt personally betrayed by what happened and wound it up. Yeah. Which made Mike's pitch later totally ineffective.
Mm-hmm. Well, we should also, we should note Dan felt quite reasonably betrayed because it was literally true. He was betrayed.
No, but I mean, he felt personally betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, but not just that he was betrayed in the general sense. Yeah.
But it was personal too, though, because he's thinking they're super tight, they're super close, they're best of friends going to the end. But then Mike obviously doesn't trust him, and it's enough to lie to him and try to screw him over. Like that's not even just a game betrayal necessarily. I mean, depends on how you read it, depends on their relationship. But in any case, I just mean that, Dan, despite not liking him for other reasons, I think had every right to feel betrayed.
Yes, true. But like I said, Rodney took it to level 11, which meant even though when Mike brought it back down, he's still at a 5 or a 6, which is anger with Mike, which is not enough to vote the way that he wants.
Yeah.
Mike did a phenomenal job walking him back from anger, but not enough to convince him to vote the way he wanted.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting, actually, because Dan's little confessional before the tribal council, he's saying, if I vote against Mike and I'm wrong, I'll never forgive myself. And I'm just thinking, well, what do you mean wrong? Like what? How would you be wrong? You're making a choice. It's not like, do I believe Mike or not? Because there's no way to determine that. You know what I mean? It's not like this vote is a test and you're going to see how Mike really votes, because that's not what's happening here. So I don't know.
That confessional had to have been taken from a different time, because it seemed pretty clear at tribal council that everybody except Jen and Shireen, maybe, like two people who didn't vote the way. I don't remember what it was.
Well, I could pull it up. But
I remember like even in on whatever the vote was.
Well, I think it was that they had 6, the 4 + 2 against 3, right? And they did, the 6 split it between, Jen and Shireen. And then hang on. I'm going to have it in just a moment. So
I think even
there was one vote for Carolyn, and that was from Jen. And so that actually may indicate that Jen did actually know what was happening, because she threw her vote away to vote for Carolyn, who she didn't like.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
Because even Mike voted for Jen.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think I knew Mike was in on whatever it was. So
yeah, so Jen. It was definitely, nobody, I think, was ultimately surprised at what happened in terms of the votes. I guess I didn't fully grasp that watching it live, but certainly in retrospect, I think you're right. So let's see, before we talked a little bit. Oh, we hadn't talked yet about Dan opening his advantage, which is kind of an amazing new twist.
Yep.
A second vote. And it's interesting that you use it at a slightly different time than the hidden idol. You use it before the votes are tallied, as opposed to the idol, which is used after the votes are cast. So, or, like, what I mean? It's like so there's the sequence is
right.
Everybody's voting. Yeah. And before Jeff goes up to get the votes, you can cast another one. Say it. Right.
Right.
If you're going to cast it, you have to cast it at the time that all of the other votes are being cast, but you can do that second one last, after everybody else has voted already. But it's still possible, even after that, if someone has an idol, to play it after that happens.
Yes.
Which is just interesting how those two things could work for or against each other. I think.
Oh, right. Because you could say, I'm going to go cast another vote.
Mm-hmm.
It could get cast. Jeff could take them. Does anyone like someone could say, I do.
Yeah, right. But the other thing is, and this is confirmed from Dalton Ross's Q&A with Probst, is you don't have to play the second vote that way. You could carry it up with you when you cast your real vote and just fill out both of them while you're up there. And nobody would know that you had cast a second vote.
That's right. I did read that, because he also said you can do whatever you want. You could announce at the beginning of tribal council or at the beginning of the votes, by the way, I have 2 votes and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So you do what I say,
It's such a cool idea. In fact, I'm actually a little astounded they haven't thought of it before now.
Well, the one question that I had that I didn't see in the Q&A with Jeff Probst, and maybe it was explained in the show and I missed it, is how long you have that for.
My guess is that, they didn't say, but my guess was that you can use it for the same length of time that you can the idol, meaning you can use it all the way up to that second to last tribal council.
Right, to where it can make a difference between who goes to the end, which is the same as the idol. Like you can't use the idol when it means you go to the end no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you couldn't use this to sway that last tie or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That makes the most sense to me, is to have it be the same rule there.
I figured it's just I thought it was weird that it wasn't explicit, but maybe it was and we just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they also don't usually mention that about the hidden idol anymore. We just know that from experience. They don't usually say that unless it comes up. You know what I mean? The players tend to know it, but they don't tell us unless it starts being relevant, like someone saying, oh, it's going to be the last time I can use it, that sort of thing.
Yeah. But this also, you know, when I was sort of on my downward spiral of like, oh, Jen got voted out, like clearly there was not even any argument, because that's why I knew that Mike voted for Jen, because I realized this wasn't even a drama. It was such a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
So I was already in this sort of downward spiral of like, well, I like Jen. I mean, I did give up, but I still liked her better than I like these people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, then she ratchets it up by telling me how much she hates everybody and reminding me I don't like them either.
Yeah.
Then we go to scenes for next time. And Tyler, who, by the way, I think sucks, starts rifling through. I don't think he sucks at the game. I don't like him as a I don't like that. You know, and this is maybe a terrible like assumption, but remember how it always used to say like former, you know,
former white collar or whatever.
Guy. Yeah, like he formerly worked for one of the big agencies.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Like there's still, every time he does this, where like as soon as someone tells him something, he like runs and tells everybody he can. Like he's got this cool like secret, like every time he does it, I'm like, I bet you were like that at work, and I hate people like you at work, and it's probably why you don't work there anymore. Because I know people like that at work, and I don't like them.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell them anything, because you know they're just going to run to everybody and tell them stuff that you need to know. And he's just like the guy who likes to get information, likes to share information, and this is another example of that. And I think it's going to ruin this double vote thing, because I feel like what's going to end up having to happen is Dan is going to have to burn them next time to show that he's not holding on to this thing.
Yeah, I hold out hope that something interesting is still going to happen with them, but you're right that it's possible.
I've held out hope for a lot of things this season, and they've not happened. Not that it hasn't been an entertaining season, but the things I've hoped for have not happened, and I don't think this is going to be. I'm coming in with lower expectations now.
Well, it's certainly true. Like crazy stuff is happening, but it's also true that the likable people are dwindling in number. So let's see. This is where we have, at first, what we see is Mike and Jen speculating that Will might have gotten more than he actually shared. They say, "Where's the box?" Did we even see Shireen also questioning that? Because I didn't remember that. I wrote down that Mike and Jen talked about it.
Yeah, I didn't remember either when it happened. And I didn't go back and rewatch, but I didn't remember it.
Yeah. So
it appeared to me that it was all of them, not her.
Yeah. Well, it certainly might be too, that if it's known from everybody that like it's those three that are, together, then it might have been that she got the brunt of it because Mike and Jen weren't at camp when it started. And so she was getting the brunt of it. And because she wasn't willing to shut up and take it, it escalated. Which, you know, it just struck me as really unfair, just because I feel like if she had been the ringleader of that stuff, you know, well, and I guess you're right. It was Tyler that went and told Will that they were saying that, right?
Yes. He's a douchebag.
So let's see. So Will goes and gets the box, brings it back, and it's just, he gets so mean. I mean, we kind of already talked about that. I don't know if there's more to say, but it was just so far over the line. It was really uncomfortable to watch. He lost any and all sympathy that he had ever had from me. I want to hope that he is actually a better person than this behavior would indicate, and that he is going to feel ashamed about it and apologize now that he is watching it from the comforts of home. But it was beyond the pale, completely unacceptable behavior. And of course, like, just from a gameplay perspective, why? Like, there's no, but at the same time, I think that's almost irrelevant because there's clearly no gameplay there. He was just, he had just flipped a switch. He was not thinking anymore. He was just yelling.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't get enough. Like, he was kept telling her, that to shut her mouth, and what else can you shove in there? What else can you shove in there? That was really strange. Well, then that wasn't enough for him. And then he went, no one loves you. You didn't, everyone out back home, everyone else here has people back home that love them. You have no family. Nobody loves you. Like, what the fuck, dude? Why?
Yeah. Well, I think it was also, he kept going because she didn't, she refused to submit to his abuse and go away. So she stayed there, engaged in the conversation, challenging him on what he's saying. And that's, I think, why he kept going. Not that I'm blaming her. I think that's good. I just mean, I think it's also true that if she had walked away, he probably would have calmed down. But again, at the same time, she shouldn't have to walk away. She stood up for herself is what she did. And he escalated and got super mean and revealed his character.
Yep.
And I think that's the other way to take her choice at the challenge. One thing to say, oh, well, she could have chosen to be the better person and not be petty. But at the same time, I think it's also, I thought of it more in that light first. But since we've talked about it a little bit, I do feel more like it might have just been seen as weak and going along to get along and taking the path of least resistance to say, okay, fine, let him have it. Everyone else is going to let him have it. And you just whatever. I don't know. Like, it could come across that way, whether she feels it that way or not. And so why not just say, you know what? Screw you, Will. You were mean to me. Why should I allow you to have this thing? It was part of the game that you chose an item and it had this rule in it, and then there was food as a compensation for that, and it wasn't what you wanted, but you did get some, and you could have done whatever you wanted with that, and it was all fair in the sense that it could have happened to any of us, and it happened to you, and now you are trying to negotiate the rules of the game, and you need my assistance. Well, you know what? You burned that bridge. It's your own fault. That's a fair thing to say. And so in that sense of maybe taking it as she's standing up for herself against him, I kind of like it again, even though I don't know that it's necessarily the gameplay thing. You know what I mean? It's like, to the extent of, like, if she makes it to the end, what's the jury going to think about that? Will obviously probably won't be a fan, assuming he's on the jury.
I mean, yeah, I think everything in this scenario has thrown gameplay out the window.
Mm-hmm.
With the two of them, I think, Mike's trying to recover. Yeah, Mike's playing hard again. Mike's back to, like, doing good things. He just has he just put himself in a hole that he has to dig out of. Them two, they just weren't thinking game with regards to this piece of it,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, Shireen also voted Jen, didn't she?
I clicked away from the thing, but I believe so. I mean, she wouldn't have voted for herself. Yeah. So there was only one vote for Carolyn, and it was from Jen. Everybody else's was either Jen or Shireen.
Right. That's why. Like I knew it was wrong. Even those two didn't even. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We also have to remember that it was just last episode that Jen didn't even want to be there anymore, and she was actively strategizing in a way to try to force herself to get voted out.
Oh,
so
yeah, no, I don't
it may well be that, you know, Mike's thinking, okay, well, it's a done deal. It's going to be Shireen or Jen. They want to get Jen because she's more of a challenge and, you know, more of a threat and challenges. Okay, she doesn't want to be here anyway. Let's just you know, keep Shireen who does.
The motivation to stay was how much she hated everybody else and didn't want them to win.
Mm-hmm.
She just wanted to keep voting them out.
Yeah.
Which I could understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, at this point, like, I'm rooting for Mike and Shireen, but after that, I'm rooting for Rodney. I never thought I would say that.
I feel like I'm not quite there yet. I was rooting probably mostly for Mike, but he just screwed the pooch in this episode. There's no two ways about it. No, which is not to say that if it came down to him versus, say, Dan and Carolyn or something, I might still prefer him to win. But
I still prefer him to win. I'm going to tell you that. So.
Well, and I can see that, but I'm also, even though I don't know that I necessarily think it's the highest odds thing, I would be happy if Shireen won.
Oh, I would too.
Yeah.
My number one is still Mike. Number two is Shireen. And that's what I said. Rodney has moved himself up to number 3 in my routine for.
Yeah, I'll agree there. Because we still got
strategy.
Yeah. We've still got Sierra out around there, but she doesn't really seem to be doing very much. Tyler,
wishy-washy.
Yeah. Tyler's kind of there too, but he also has that not super admirable trait of talking behind everybody's, you know, like getting entrusted with something and then rushing to tell everybody. But yeah, so I agree. I think my ranking is about the same as yours in terms of preference.
Yeah, because you see, like, at least the way it looks like it unfolds next week is that, okay, fine, he went and found Dan's advantage. But instead of going and telling Dan, I know your advantage, let's work together, he runs around, it's like, I found out Dan's advantage. Like, I hate those people. I hate those people.
Well, also, I'm just thinking, Dan just voted with you guys. He's on your side. He's got a double vote thing. Awesome. Let's make sure he uses his extra vote to get Mike out.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying.
To do
Tyler's perspective.
Yeah.
With him, if you're like, hey, I know this thing exists. Can I help you use it the most effectively when it's time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now you've made a freedom of 2 people. Necessarily anybody's there, and he's still got Carolyn, so they've really got 4 with only 3.
Mm-hmm.
They can do what they want if he's smart about it, and not. I can't like him. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in any case, that's next time.
Yeah.
What we get is, I guess we're at the immunity challenge now. We have at the beginning. You know, we talked a little bit about this already, but, you know, Will, very emotional, asks, can he pull himself out of the challenge in exchange for the letter? It was interesting the way Probst put it, in the sense of making sure to poll everybody, because on the one hand, obviously it became relevant, but I feel like if he didn't have an inkling that it was going to be relevant, he probably wouldn't have bothered. Like, why would anyone else care that he pulls himself out of the immunity challenge to get a letter that only means something to him?
Right. That immunity challenge that he's not really going to compete with them again. That he's not a huge threat. Like, he's never been close to winning an immunity challenge. You know, and if he had it in him to win one, this would be the one he would have dug out and won. Yeah.
So I feel like he probably wouldn't have made such a production of having everybody have to be unanimous if it hadn't been that he knew that there was a lot of tension. And so maybe some people who would say no.
You have to. I mean, you have to think that Probst doesn't just go into that shit blind. Like, he's well prepared. He is one of the best hosts on TV.
Yeah. It's also possible that they actually have that sort of a vote pretty frequently and just don't usually show it because it's not relevant. You know, just sort of is everybody okay with that? They might do that more often than we think. In any case, the challenge was pretty fun. Carrying the little ball with long metal tongs over teeter-totters. Looked pretty hard. Why do you think Mike was so much more successful than anybody else in that challenge?
Desire.
Yeah.
That's why I say if this was one that Will was ever capable of winning, he would have done, because he would have dug it out. I think Mike dug it out because he knew he was in a hole, and he is able to translate that properly into not being erratic, but being determined.
Yeah.
It's why I still have him as my favorite.
Yeah. He certainly won it when he needed it.
Right. I think that was really it. I think he was able to just focus and say, once he figured it out, he was just like, lock in on this. Like, that's how people who are determined work. Like, that's how, people who are good at golf or anything else. Like, it's just if you need it, once you figure out how to do it right, you just find a way to repeat it over and over and over again, And I think he just has that, and I respect that, So
yeah. So Mike wins, good for him. Tyler was the only one that was really even close, but it wasn't even that close. And cut to Rodney's mouth blurring. I was looking for that and was not disappointed.
Yeah. He was definitely ready to make his move, finally.
I also like, and will miss Jen's offbeat sarcasm of, good job, Mike. No one else get too excited.
Yes. She was entertaining, but...
Yeah. Well, she was also not it's weird to even say she's not a strong player because she didn't really even seem to be trying very hard. She was kind of just there to hang out and have fun. And then once her best friend was voted off, it was just like, oh, okay, I'm done now.
Yeah, it's not fun anymore. Yeah.
So he hugs Shireen. He needed it. And then, of course, we get the return of the happy dance. And I was thinking he still has the idol, too. For a guy who screwed up as badly as he did in the first half of the episode, he's in a much better position now than he had any right to expect. Immune this time, still has an idol in his pocket, yet he's got time to try to do something.
Yeah, and I think his conversation with Dan, he did it. He gave a great shot at it. Like, yeah, he's definitely gotten back into the right mode.
I feel like there's even still room because clearly Dan's mindset going into this was this idea of, okay, strategically, I think I have to try to get Mike out because everyone agrees he's a threat. But I think his heart, he was kind of like he maybe wanted to stay with Mike, but he didn't think that was really probably the smart move. And so he decided to go with what he felt was the smart move. It's hard to entirely disagree either, except, of course, that I think it's also true what Mike said, which is Rodney, Carolyn, Tyler, and Will are just using Dan. They are not intending to take him to the end.
Right. And, now Dan has to actually start to think about that,
But at the same time, the longer Mike sticks around, the better his narrative actually looks if he does make it to the end. So it might be in Dan's best interest to say, yes, that's a good point that they're going to use me. So once you're gone, I'll think about that.
Yeah, except I can't imagine how much he's going to want to work with Tyler if he truly Sorry, I keep going back to next week, but it just
sure. No, that's
already
fine.
because he's done this a couple of times, and then he did it in this episode, and he set up that he prompted what was the most uncomfortable part of this whole episode, which was watching. Tyler did that just because he's a fucking he's a snake. Like it kept showing every time he was on screen, it would cut to a snake. Like they weren't subtle with their edit, and for him do that again in a totally unnecessary situation, which we may or may not know how it goes down, but it felt like that. It just reinforced how much I didn't like how he prompted that this week.
Well, and then also, I mean, it wasn't even the only time this episode, because it was also the that whole thing of when Dan's off hearing Mike's pitch and everyone else is starting to go like, Dan and Mike are talking a long time. Do we need to worry about that? And then Tyler goes to Dan, everyone, including me, was questioning you when you were over there talking to Mike.
Right.
And I actually, I liked, And one thing I will say is, like, I've, certainly not liked Dan because he's kind of a dick and he says some offensive things. But I did like at least the part where he kind of reacts to being told that. It's like, you guys, I'm going to make my own friggin' decision. It's not you guys are in charge here. It's like I'm deciding, like at the one hand, he talks about it being his worst nightmare to be the swing vote, which is a nice thing for him to be aware of. But I also liked him kind of standing up for himself a little bit of just this idea of, you're going to question my motives behind my back. Like, I don't like the way you're handling that. But then, of course, everyone else is probably kind of giving a sideways glance to Tyler. It's like, why did you even tell him that?
That's exactly right. I've forgotten about that. That was there was multiple scenarios where I was just like, Tyler, I don't like what you're doing.
Yeah. So in any case, we go into tribal council with Dan implying that there's $1 million decision on the line that in retrospect was a foregone conclusion.
Yep.
And so Will had promised an entertaining tribal council, but again, he was just in rant mode. It was not any kind of it was still like, I just kept imagining him in his living room, sitting on the couch and watching this, and watching himself try to shout down someone who's talking about their history of domestic abuse, of being abused by their parents, and that's why they don't have family watching at home, and explaining why that would be such a hurtful thing to use as a personal insult, and him trying to just say, oh yeah, play the victim. What an asshole. I mean, that's like, that is monstrous is what it is. And I'm willing to maybe give him the slightest benefit of the doubt that he had just kind of flipped off into crazy town and was not fully aware of what he was saying. Which, we've seen that happen on this show before. These people are very strained psychologically, right? But all of that benefit of the doubt is contingent on the reunion show. He either owes her a big freaking apology or he's just a bad person, period, in my mind.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's how it seems to me. And I don't know if, I don't know. Well, I suppose there might be people who would disagree. But, it's always possible. Sorry. You occasionally are turning into like auto-tune version of yourself with the the internet cutting in and out.
I agree with you.
So in any case, Rodney has a rant of his own where clearly he's still trying to, to dig and reinforce Mike's mistakes, but he's also clearly got a lot of emotion of his own wrapped up in this because, of course, there's this whole element that Mike was absolutely right in his accusations, and Rodney's feeling defensive and angry that his plan is out in the open now, even though he's still kind of trying to deny it. But in any case, his rant, even after everything that Will had done, his rant prompts Jeff to say, wow.
Yep, that's it. Wow.
Yep. So in any case, I also had a note right here at the end. It's like Dan's last comment before the vote. It's like, Dan finally realizes that it's about the jury now, and you want people to like you on the jury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that I think the difference between Dan and Will is that I feel like Dan is going to rewatch this and really not understand what people are complaining about. He's going to say, "What? I'm being very polite to them. I'm just telling them how I felt. I'm just being honest."
And someone really should have slapped her.
It's like, well, obviously I didn't want someone physically really to slap her. It's just a joke. What is everybody so upset about?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely, that sort of person who feels that being honest is the same thing as just not ever having a filter for anything you say.
Yep.
In any case, no idols are played. And as we discussed, it's, there's one vote for Carolyn from Jen. Everyone else is Jen or Shireen. Never really in doubt. And so next time we have, we kind of already talked about both of those things, but Dan continuing to get pitched by Mike and kind of just soaring like, you are so much more a threat now. Like, you already were a threat, and that's why we were going to potentially be talking about you. And then you won an immunity challenge and whatever else you might have. Like, maybe he's also reacting like, what if Mike tells him, is like, I've got the hidden idol. Right? Like,
that might be why he does that.
Yeah. Because certainly if it comes right down to it, it might be, when he still has at least a couple of potential allies, it might be a useful place to actually wield the idol of saying, you want to have enough numbers that they can't just flush it and then still send one of your allies home. You know what I mean? But I don't know. It's tricky. We'll have to see how it goes. But yes, it's also true. I agree with you that even though crazy stuff is happening, which is exciting, the trend has been that people we like are getting voted off, and we hope that does not continue.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So I think that does it for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening and or watching. And we'll be back next week for more talking about Survivor.
Yes.